Hello there, my name is Luciano Oliveira, I'm a Brazilian attorney, and today I'm going to be answering this question. Do I need to translate my documents into Portuguese when applying for the Digital Nomad Visa in Brazil? And the answer is, of course, depends. If you are applying in Brazil, which is usually our recommendation for everyone, yes, you must translate every single document into Portuguese. If you don't translate, whatever document is missing a translation is going to be usually flagged by the Brazilian immigration as insufficient, and they are going to usually give you an opportunity to provide a translation to keep your application moving along. Now, if you are applying abroad, it may also be the case that a translation is going to be required. But again, it depends on which country you are applying from. I'm going to give you two examples, and I think it's going to help you understand the dynamics behind the need or the not need for obtaining translation, and it's going to work like this. If you are applying, for instance, in the United States, or if you are applying in the UK through a Brazilian consulate, most probably than not, you're not going to need to provide any translation. And the reason for that is because English is one of the main languages, of course, that personnel working at the Brazilian consulate or embassy must know in order to be approved for this work abroad. All of them are going to be able to understand those documents and to actually verify if they are correct, and therefore you're not going to need to provide a translation. That's the same thing, the same concept applied to Portugal or any other Portuguese-speaking countries. Of course, you are presenting the documents in Portuguese, so there would be no need, even though Portuguese varies slightly across the countries. They are not the very same thing like in Portugal as they are in Brazil, but still people at the Brazilian consulate in Lisbon, for instance, they are not going to ask you to translate anything. Now, let's talk about a different example. You are applying for the Brazil Digital Nomad Visa in China. You are applying in Japan. You are applying in Dubai. You are in the United Arab Emirates. In all of those countries, there is one thing in common. Most of the employees in the Brazilian consulate, or if we're talking about Abu Dhabi, is going to be actually an embassy. Most of the Brazilian employees do not speak the language of the country where the consulate or the embassy sits. There's going to be a number of employees who do speak the language, but I guarantee most of them do not, because they are career workers from the Brazilian government, and they are sent throughout the world, and of course there is not enough time for them to learn every single language. So usually if you are applying in one of those countries, you're most probably going to need to provide a translation into either Portuguese, which is going to be the preferred translation, of course, or if there are no translators from the language, native language spoken in that country to Portuguese, you could alternatively provide, and of course you need to check with the Brazilian consulate or embassy to confirm that, maybe you could translate into English, and in that case they are going to be able to read the documents. Short answer is, unless you are in one of those few countries where they speak English or Portuguese, yes, you're going to need to translate your documents. And particularly if you are in Brazil, you're also going to need to translate your documents into Portuguese as part of the application for the Brazil Digital Nomad Visa. Finally, before you get a wrong idea here that it may be more economic or let's say smarter to apply in the US, for instance, instead of applying in Brazil. Remember that when you apply outside of Brazil, this triggers a requirement for health insurance in Brazil, which is extremely expensive unless your current health insurance does provide clear coverage for Brazil, which, at least from our experience with our clients, is kind of rare. But yes, if your health insurance covers Brazil, you are good. But if not, you're gonna need to buy a health insurance that could easily cost a couple of $1,000s, if not more. Therefore, even if you're paying for translation services to apply in Brazil, the majority of the time it's going to represent a better deal from a financial perspective to apply in Brazil than applying abroad at a consulate or embassy. I hope this information was helpful. Do not forget to download our ebook, The 7 Most Common Mistakes Made by Foreign Citizens When Applying for the Brazil Digital Nomad Visa, and follow us for more tips.